I was going to say you can take it in a scientific direction, but first I totally wanted to agree that it's never made any sense when the standard for Guitar Hero and Rock Band's viability has been whether or not they teach you to play music. I mean, any more fair than it would be to say that Call of Duty is a shit game, because if you took what you learned from that, I mean, basically, where your understanding of where brown people spawn and where to throw grenades at, you'd be dead in a fucking second. So that's just not fair. But it's interesting what you're saying about how it teaches you to sort of parse the music and see the interrelationships and how the things are working. Because I've been reading about neuroplasticity recently, and that's just the notion that, well, the old notion for your brain was that they're hardwired, right? That they work sort of the parts of your brain are analogous to your organs, and that your frontal cortex or your parietal lobe are basically designed to just do one sort of function, and it will always perform that function. But what research over the past 30 years has shown is that your brain's much more plastic than that, especially when you're young, but even up through old age. It's musicians, the parts of their cortex that process, auditory stimuli and all this other things are massively larger by a big percentage, 20 to 50% larger in musicians than they are in non-musicians, and the mental, the sort of neuronal maps that you call them for processing that stuff are much more finely grained. So, like, an example would be, I'm going to give you an example, from just an animal, right? If you play a tone for a young rat, and you look in its brain, which specific neurons light up, you can play a whole range of tones, and it's always just the same cluster that lights up. But as you continue to expose it over time to different tones, not only will they start to differentiate, at first you'll see this massive growth in that area. I mean, because your brain is always trying to say what's most important. There's limited space here, and you're going to lose anything you're not using. And everything comes at a cost, too. So the musicians that have all that cortex taken up for audio stuff, that's space that's not being invested in, any other number of things. But so what would happen is that you basically build pathways in your brain that are physical, that you can prove that are dedicated to processing certain types of, certain senses that are dedicated to types of perception. It makes sense that, even paying that kind of attention to music over time, and especially with a reward scenario that you have, like in Rock Band. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm not trying to go on too long, but especially with the reward system, it's basically exactly what they did to the rats. You get a reward for doing well in that, and for paying attention and differentiating those notes. And it makes perfect sense. I think even scientifically that it would have the result you're talking about, Robert.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think I've lost in my brain? Because I can't even count the number of things that I may have lost.
Yeah,
I think my brain is occupied by a lot of dumb shit.
I think that's for everyone, though. Anytime you're a specialist in something, I'm starting to wonder, because we don't know now the extent to which everything has a neuronal map. We know, like I said, that senses do, your hands, the touch in your fingertips, your genitals, your ears, every bit of sensory stimuli that's coming in. And then, like we said, anything with language, with speaking and reading and listening. But what if video games? I mean, the theory has also been that television and stuff too, they changed actually the way that your brain is wired. I wonder if I get in that with video games that I've played, especially for years and years, like Company Heroes, and it becomes this comfort food, and I don't want to do anything else, because the downside of that same plasticity is that you dedicate so much of your space to doing something well, and you've told your mind that this is important, that this is valuable. And then it's very greedy with maintaining that. It's kind of like if you think that, it kind of wears a groove. Like if you're skiing down a slope, you have a chance of going any which direction. But if you continually ski over time, you'll start to notice that you're following a path, because you're basically putting a groove into it.
Sure.
I don't know. Do you guys?
So this is kind of our parents saying that this shit will rot our brain out is kind of true.
Well, it seems more to me like the message is that you got to always, make sure you're trying new things and new games, new experiences in your life to try to push your brain to change and keep up and and not wear the grooves of Company of Heroes into your brain hour after hour, day after
exactly.
day.
I mean, don't you think most of us, our brains do tell us that? I mean, even if you're playing Company of Heroes for 10 hours straight or WoW for 26 hours straight, at some
think
point
about
you're
Jeff,
go,
though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, a lot of people, especially as they get older, and you know how they become fixed in their ways, right?
Sure.
Their diet remains the same. The music that they listen to remains largely the same.
Right.
The types of television that they watch,
Yes.
the types of books that they read. And you're right, though, Robert.
Yeah.
Robert's right about it being like really beneficial to go outside of that because, in all taking, this new knowledge of neuroplasticity and using it to rehabilitate stroke victims, people with dementia, people with even its work, on some autistic people. The best thing they can ever find is just flat out, aside from programs that they have, is to just learn another language in old age.
Sure.
But also, or to learn to play an instrument.
Yes.
And it proves that it has beneficial side effects that don't apply just to, say, speaking another language or playing another instrument. It makes you much sharper.
I mean, I don't think I'm unique. I find that to just be sort of a general survival instinct. I mean, certainly part of my my instinct to leave Ziff, I mean, not just because the place was imploding, was also because of the need to try something new as I was getting older. I mean, also in the last 12 months, I did exactly what you're suggesting, and I started teaching myself how to play guitar. I even think about, when I got the opportunity to go to Gamescom, part of it was well, I've never been to that part of Germany before. I mean, part of all of that, I think, is the same impulse. It's my brain saying, I'm alive here and I got to try new things. I don't want to just wear down that same groove on the slope,
Yeah. I'm glad you did that.
But I don't
I
think
agree, most people.
I didn't mean that to be 2 minutes of self-congratulatory soliloquy there. I mean, God, I'm awesome. I meant it more like just observing what I did as feeling well, isn't that what we all do, though, as a way to sort of keep ourselves alive is, I think most of our brains function that way, don't they?
A lot of people don't do that, though. And
Exactly.
what you're right is when you look at some of the longest lived people who still have the sharpest minds well into old age, travel and that kind of almost you can confuse it for dilettantism is sort of characteristic of almost all of them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a lot of people, Jeff, unlike what you're saying, they do all the learning and processing when they're young and up through their 20s, and then they sort of master a profession. And then at that point, it's more just tuning what they already know rather than acquiring new stuff. And then they go on with that and then, just continue down that path until they retire.
I was talking to a friend of mine from college who's in his 40s like me, and he was one of my music buddies back in the day. So we'd go to the clubs in LA when we both lived there, and being current with the new bands was very much the thing, and we started talking about music, and he completely bummed me out because, he started saying that shit that, you just don't want to hear in terms of, really, has there been anything good since 1983? That kind of thing, And then, I mean, didn't we really peak with the Go-Go's? That kind of thing. And I'm like, Jesus.
And rap's not music.
Right. I'm like, Jesus, dude, really? And he was, amazed at me that, someone... I mean, it's the same thing I'll hear from people, half my age. It's wow, you're so cool for listening to new music. And to me, it's not I'm not, that's just what I do. It's not an age thing at all. It's just I want to hear new stuff because I want to hear new stuff,
So what did he say when you started showing him crabcore videos on YouTube?
Yeah, that wasn't a good argument for why you should keep listening to new stuff.